Hello, and welcome to the SIF 45 Streams Roundtable series. I'm Mallory Martin, the Artistic Director for the Cleveland International Film Festival. We want to give special thanks to PNC for sponsoring our Filmmaker Conversations content throughout the festival. On today's Roundtable episode, we'll be joined by filmmakers from the After Hours films First Date, My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To, and Superior. We'll be talking about how these films are the debut feature-length films for each of these directors and how they all represent unique voices when it comes to genre filmmaking. I'd like to introduce Manuel Crosby, director, producer, writer, cinematographer, editor of First Date, Jonathan Quartes, director, writer of My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To, and Aaron Vasilopoulos, director, writer, and editor of Superior. Thank you guys so much for being here with us today.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
All right, so let's get started. I want to start off by having each of you reflect a bit on what it's been like having your first features premiere virtually this past year, because I believe that was the case for each of you, and correct me if I'm wrong. With First Date and Superior premiering at the recent virtual Sundance, and then My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To was a selection of the Tribeca 2020 Festival before it moved online last year. Have any of you been able to have any in-person screenings yet, or are there plans to? Aaron, do you want to start?
Sure. We haven't had any in-person screenings yet. So far just virtual, and so far just Sundance was the first virtual experience. I mean, it's definitely a little surreal, but at the same time, like, we're so sort of deep in this virtual space now. It's like feeling more and more normal, which is strange. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to like summarize my feelings about it all, but I think it went pretty well, like our screenings at Sundance. And I mean, one cool thing was definitely getting to reach people who wouldn't have been at the physical festival. That was certainly special to like share the film with more family and friends. But I've noticed I'm really grateful for these experiences because it becomes much harder to connect with filmmakers, I found, and like talk about each other's movies. So
right. And Aaron, I think I saw something, maybe a video you did for Sundance, but you talked about how you used the sort of lockdown period of the pandemic as a time to really edit a lot. And I think that that's a common theme with a lot of filmmakers I've been talking to this year, is that's somewhat of a silver lining, that people who at least were able to finish production, hopefully, before COVID hit, in some ways that was, kind of a good thing in order to have more time to edit too.
Yeah, it definitely was for us. It slowed down the whole post process, which gave, I co-edited the feature with Jen Ruff, and it gave us a lot more time, I think, to experiment and really like exhaust all possibilities and just play around more than I think we would have been able to otherwise.
Right.
So.
And Manuel, was that kind of similar for you and your co-director Darren?
Well, a little bit. I mean, our post did kind of overlap. The end of our post was kind of the beginning of COVID, actually. So by that point, our picture was actually locked, and we were getting ready to move into sound, color, and music when everything shut down. And our post team actually is out in El Paso, Texas, and Darren and I are in Northern California. So we had been going out there to work on locking the picture with our co-editor Zach Passero when everything stopped. So the rest it was a challenge to figure it out, especially because our colorist was immunocompromised as well. So we had to just make sure, to really respect like everybody's, health and safety. And he was able to kind of design a way in which we didn't have to be in the same room to work on the color together. So I actually wound up driving out there in late summer of 2020. I slept in my car on the way, Uh, yeah, it was like a 2-day trip. It was actually really nice. It was a nice, going on a little road trip was a nice way to kind of end the process. And I quarantined once I got there, and then we all got tested, and then I was able to work on the mix with our sound designer Andrew Smedick, and then work on the color with Ryan Orozco. And for the music, actually, though, that was another interesting thing. I was working with 2 friends up here on the music. They live in Reno, Nevada, and it was right when we started that everything shut down. So I actually wound up quarantining at my co-composer's house for like 2 months, and it was so strange. Like his name's Noah Loudermilk. At night, he and his now wife would be sitting up like just in the dark in the living room, like worrying about the state of the world. We didn't know if the world was ending or what. And then in the morning we'd be like working on the music for this movie. And, it was a really great bonding experience, actually. And just really kind of what we needed during that time. So
that's great. That's good to hear that, though. And Jonathan, how about you? Your film's been around a little bit longer now in the festival circuit. Can you talk to us about, Tribeca, like having been chosen for that, and then you were kind of right in the mix of everything when it first started falling apart at first. If you want to talk.
Yeah, I remember we finished around April, and that's when we were finishing the movie with score and everything. So we were getting ready for Tribeca, but South by Southwest had just been canceled. So we were all already expecting, we were just waiting for it to happen. And we had gotten our tickets to fly out, and we were all so excited. So it was a little heartbreaking, but at the same time, I think there's a lot to be grateful for. And I understand that it's still a privilege to be able to play at all these festivals. And we've played at CGIS, and we played in Europe. So a lot of those film festivals were physical. So they were in-person events, and I couldn't fly out. So I still haven't seen the film in a theater, but I've been trying my hardest just to keep a line of communication. So whether it be through Q&As like this, or conversations like this, or even just Twitter messages with fans who have reached out, I think it's important to continue that communication in whatever means possible.
I totally agree. And just for you guys, so SIFF was kind of in the mix of all that too last spring, and we pivoted online about 3 weeks in between finding out we were shut down by the city and then actually getting all the films online. But we didn't have time to do any of this, to pull off any sort of virtual filmmaker engagement, which was really, a heartbreak for all of us last year. And that was a big focus for us for this year, because it's so important and such a big part of the festival. And I think going forward, we're all desperate for in-person events and of course theatrical screenings and stuff too. But I'm hoping that this sort of has opened up a pathway for us to bring even more filmmakers to the festival. If they can't attend in person, at least we can do something like this. So thanks for continuing to support festivals that way. It's great. Okay, so each of you also, a couple of you talked about this already, but each of you also wrote or co-wrote the scripts for your first features. Can you talk a little bit about that process? How long in the making were each of your films? I know at least Aaron and Jonathan, your films were based off of short films. Meanwhile, I'm not sure if that was the case for you guys, but actually I'll start with you, Manuel, if you want to talk about your process with writing, because you wrote it with Darren as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. So ours wasn't based off of a short film. Ours was based off of me having catastrophic car failure in 2017. And I was just like, why does this always happen? It's like, every heavily used car I have lasts about 1.5 years and then it explodes. So I was down at Darren's house in Valley Springs, which is where we both grew up, and he still lives there. And just, we were having breakfast. I was just sort of commiserating with him about that, and how when you buy a used car, you never really know, what who had it before you, and how they treated it, what they did to it. And kind of just joking around, I just thought I threw out, that'd be a funny idea for a movie if it's American like kid buys his first car story, but it's just got a way more, crazy history than he ever knew. And we were kind of joking around, throwing ideas back and forth, and it just snowballed. And by the end of that breakfast, we actually had the entire outline for the movie. And that was when I got really excited. And we had been watching a lot of like mid 90s through like early 2000s kind of American independent movies, a lot of crime movies and comedies and dark comedies, and I was just like, let's make one. Like, I'm feeling that same sort of energy here. So we started writing the script, started out like fleshing out that outline with character stuff in March of 2017. And then I said, let's, we were both working our day jobs at the time, and wanted to work on it together or over the phone together. So we kind of spread things out, but we set a goal for having the first draft done by New Year's Day. I think we were like a week off of that, but I think it was January 7th or 8th we had the script. So
wow, nice. And Erin, how about you?
So Superior did start out as a short. I wrote and directed the short back in 2015. And in casting the short, met the twin sisters who are in both the short and the feature, Ani and Ale Mesa. And after making the short, I didn't really have a plan for a feature. I didn't really consider it for a while. But it was actually like 4 years later, I had kept in touch with Ani and Ale, and we were all sort of out of school at that point, trying to get our first projects off the ground. And I think over time, we just like still loved the world of the short and the characters, the twin sisters. And also Ale Mesa had started doing some more screenwriting and becoming more interested in screenwriting. So we started talking about the idea of writing something together. And it was kind of similar. We got together just to like spitball ideas, and like by the end of that night, we had sort of like outlined the feature. We were so excited. And I think because so much time had passed since the short, we knew we didn't want to try to expand the short into a feature. The Ani and Ale were, I think, like 19 when we made the short. So we kind of pretty quickly became interested in the idea of a jump in time with the same characters. So sort of like picking up the narrative about 6 years after the short. And just
is that the same time between when you actually
it's about the same.
Okay.
In the end, like from when we shot the short to when we finished the feature. Okay. That's how it started. And in terms of like a timeline, we were really lucky. It came together pretty quickly. We were writing in the winter of like 2018 and spring of 2019. And then we were super lucky to meet our lead producer. And he had twin brothers and just like really connected to the script and was like, I think we can do this later this year. And I didn't really believe him at first, but then like over the next few weeks, it became clear he was super committed, and we were able to film in late 2019.
That's great. It's always nice to have great producers like that.
It was incredible. It was like very, very fortunate. Yeah.
That's great. Mm-hmm. And Jonathan, can you talk about how your short became the feature?
Yeah, it was kind of similar experience to Erin's short. I think we did shoot. I wrote and directed the short version for school in 2015 as well. And we started doing festivals in 2017, which is actually where I met Paul Sloop at Palm Springs Short Fest. And I think around that time, we started thinking about the idea of making it a feature. So it wasn't originally a proof of concept, but I thought there was more room to expand the story, and there was a way to do it in a more economical style where it probably wouldn't cost as much as another script that was more ambitious. So my brother and I wrote the script, but my brother, who's my cinematographer, in reality, he's so close to me that he's like another director. And so I wrote the script and he would give me notes, and then we were able to team up with our lead producer, Kenny Riches, and he's a director first, so his goal was to give us everything that he didn't get on his movies, and we were able to shoot it in the spring of 2019. So it was a while, and the writing was very treacherous. Unlike we didn't have the outline in one seating. It took years, and it was hard, but it was my first feature script, so it was very exciting to get to make it.
And I think I read somewhere, is this true that you guys shot it in 20 days? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or did it? Okay, that's impressive.
we had 21, and then we had to cut a day, and I thought, wasn't it going to get easier? I'm like, what happened? Now it's just going to get harder. But it was so much fun, and the whole cast and crew was so kind and very welcoming of me, because it's my first film, and it just felt very nice. It was a very nice environment that allowed us to go faster, I think.
Yeah. Long script writing process, 20 days shoot. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So I think the success of each of these films is really due a lot to the unique styles that I think each of you already have as filmmakers, whether it's blending genres or shooting on 60mm film, or moods being set by wardrobes or scores, or even the colors that you chose to use. It's really remarkable that all of these are your first feature films. I just have to say, and I cannot wait to see what you all do next too. So Aaron, can you talk a little bit about what it was like shooting Superior on 60mm film? Obviously, there's many challenges with shooting on film, but there's a lot of payoff as well. And what made you decide to do that for this film in particular?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was super lucky to get to start working with film in film school. I went through the grad film program at NYU, and met our DP, Mia Chofi Henry, like first day of film school. We were in the same class, and we, I think, just got paired together on our first short film, which was like a silent short shot on black and white film. And from that project, we both like started working together, and I got really hooked on working with film. I just like really love the process and sort of the delayed gratification of having to be a little bit more like in the moment and not knowing like 100% what you have. But like, yeah, I've just found it's really exciting, and it sort of helped me develop a process of like not shooting too much, and kind of, I think, informed a little bit more of like a restrained shooting style that I also have kind of kept up since that first project. And yeah, there, like you said, there are a lot of challenges. For one, financially, it's expensive. So I was super lucky on the feature. That was like one of the first things that came up with my producers. And I was very grateful that they, like, because we were really trying to continue the world we had created in the short. We had shot the short on Super 16, and they were very supportive from the beginning and just felt the importance of continuing that format. So that was really lucky. And yeah, what else? It is challenging. It definitely requires a bit more time, I think. But I do think it creates a feeling on set, like there's just like the stakes are even higher a little bit, or just everyone's like tuned in a way that I really like. And yeah, I hope to be able to continue to work with film as much as possible. But
yeah, and I think it totally added to the aesthetic of the film too in so many ways.
It's also a period piece, and
right.
You know, it fits, knowing, yeah, we were trying to kind of achieve an 80s aesthetic. It also made a lot of sense. And also I'm just very like visually driven, and love color, and just the way color shows up on film is, to me, incredible. And so all of that goes into it. Also very much the visual components.
Well, I hope that you get to present it on film too.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the film deserves that for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So Jonathan, your film, like you said, you started to talk about your brother. who's your cinematographer, but also I think it's interesting that your film both features like a trio of siblings in front and behind the camera. So, because your other brother, I believe, is your production designer, correct?
My dad.
Oh, your dad?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought it was your brother.
People
Okay, that's
have
great.
mistaken him for my brother, but I do have a younger brother, so that's where the three
Oh,
siblings comes from.
gotcha.
But
Okay.
yeah, it was very important to have a family oriented crew as well. So I wanted, it's a story about family told by a family, and that was important to me.
That's great. I mean, can you talk? So you talked a little bit about how your brother, who was the cinematographer, helped you with the writing process. I mean, also the aesthetic, I think, of My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To is just really beautiful too. And I think it adds a whole layer to the film. Can you talk about if the two of you worked on that together from the beginning, or if that was more his influence?
At the time, we were living together, so every single day, that's all we would talk about, and we would just watch movies the whole day. I mean, since we were kids, that's all we would do. And I think that the dialogue in the movie is so spare that a lot of it is told through visuals and private moments and stuff that's not said through words. And so a lot of the writing has to do with cinematography, and I think it's kind of espousing the cinematography and the script at the same time. So these were very deliberate choices from the beginning. We were looking a lot at paintings and a lot at photographers like Gregory Crutzen, because we just wanted to analyze and kind of like voyeurs look at this family from a distance and just watch their suburban life. And even though it was an extreme version of that, we wanted to keep it simple, and we didn't want to place judgment with the camera. We just wanted to stay back and observe this family. And so these were all choices that we made while writing the script. And of course, he comes at it through story. He cares about the story first, and then we think about how that can be told through movement or lack of movement and through light. And I just want to say, Aaron, I commend you for your bravery, because we were also thinking of shooting on Super 16, but we were just so scared because it's so much. It's so much for a first-time filmmaker that we thought film would just add a whole other hurdle. But I want to commend you, because I think the payoff is very, very good.
But your film looks incredible too. I just sort of like, I really love the aesthetic.
Thank you. Yeah,
That's
and
really strong.
we did add some film grain at the end, but it was a lot of just keeping the camera still. And I think we had in the back of our minds, we were thinking about the budget, and so we knew that we didn't need a dolly, we didn't need a steady cam, and a lot of the shots were so still that we wanted to add more of an effect to the scenes where the camera did move. So we kind of used it to our advantage in terms of the budget as well.
I love that you brought up the painting reference too, because it does look, many scenes look like a painting, and that's difficult to pull out. So congrats.
Thank you.
Manuel, between you and your co-director, Darren, when the two of you were writing the film, did you know from the beginning that it was going to end up as, I mean, it sounded like you were talking about that in the writing process, but that it was going to kind of end up as like sort of comedy of errors meets Tarantino action film? You said that, I think you guys are watching a bunch of 90s films, so I just wanted to see if you had any particular influences from that.
Exactly. Yeah. That, Coen brothers with, a little Kevin Smith thrown in there too.
Yeah.
We, and of course, Robert Rodriguez, that was part of what got me excited about it, actually, was that I was kind of seeing images that had that feel as we were talking about it that day when we were having breakfast, and like, so the visuals were already kind of coming together, and that was really exciting. And something I love about those movies too, that it changes a little bit as these directors go on to like bigger and better budgets and things like that, but they had this like scrappy yet like beautiful intentional quality to them as well, as particularly through like the lighting and the lens choices. Like, it's not perfect, it feels like a movie, but it just like feels so right too, you know. It's like it's a little bit grimy, a little bit like harsh in a good way. I don't know. I just was like, that just gives me that feeling of like electricity when you're watching those movies, you know, that they were just kind of like, I don't know, just like you can feel the energy that went into making them, and that translates to the viewers. So that was what really got me excited about the visuals for this one. I also would have loved to shoot on film. Probably would have completely destroyed the film, and you know, we wouldn't have a movie. So yeah, like props to you, Aaron, for going for that. But you know, that we knew, you know, like you, Jonathan, that, you know, probably wasn't an option for our budget, but how could we at least like do whatever we could to capture as similar of a vibe as we could. It's kind of like a fun challenge. So.
Well, and I think also what made these films so successful are the leads too. And I know, Aaron, you talked about the twins a little bit. And I feel like each of you have pretty good backstories with some of the leads. And well, I think they were first-time actors. So actually, I'm going to start with you again, if you don't mind talking about your two leads and how you found them, because they were really great.
Yeah, no, we got so lucky and so fortunate to have them. So we had, in casting the film, we put out a notice on like a local kind of casting website for the greater Sacramento, California area. So that's where all of our actors are from, except for the guy in the first scene. But you know, we had been kind of concerned. We knew we could find everybody, but we were worried about the kids because I didn't know how many, you know, young actors there would be in the area who would be like committed enough to, you know, to being in a film, to kind of work on this for a longer stretch of time, because our shooting schedule was pretty spread out. But when we got Tyson's audition video, he, like, the first thing he did was like introduce himself and apologize because he had never been in an audition video before, and he was like so awkward and charming. I was laughing before he even got into the scene, and so I was like, we got to meet this kid. And he had so we went out and met him, and then with Shelby, she had made a video of herself pretending to punch a punching bag, and she laughs about that because she didn't know what she was doing at all. She had never punched anything before. But there, you know, there's like they just both had that spark, right? So we got them together, and did the scene where they're sitting in the car together talking. Filmed a little demo in Darren's garage, and they just had that chemistry and just clicked, and so that's what we knew.
That's great. Yeah, they did have really great chemistry. Aaron, can you talk a little bit more about how you met the twins? I think you said you met them in film school, and just kind of how it happened for you guys, and how that felt right when you did meet them.
Yeah, I was so lucky to meet them because I had written this short about identical twins, and I was in film school. They were both studying acting at NYU. But I wrote the short, and then I was like, oh my God, like, where am I going to find teenage identical twin sisters who can act? But I put out a casting call, and they were like at different studios in New York, but I think one of their professors saw like a flyer I had posted at their school and was like, oh, you should respond to this. And I think we first met for coffee and talked about the script, talked about movies, and just really connected personally. And then being in school, we got to do some like directing exercises where I got to film some scenes from the short, like leading up to the shoot. So we got to kind of start rehearsing that way. And like certain elements of their life kind of started bleeding into the world of the short. And it just clicked. And, you know, part of it was like necessity, but they're amazing. And we just really connected. And and then eventually went on to co-write the feature with Ale, which was super exciting, knowing that they would obviously be in the feature too.
Right. I feel like now I want to see another film with them in 6 years, you know?
We've been talking about that.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah, we're like, should we just go like Linklater? Just like just keep this world going. Because we have a lot of fun with it. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. And Jonathan, can you talk about your cast too, and how you got Patrick into the lead as Dwight, who was just phenomenal?
Yeah, that was very, very lucky. And I had worked on one of Kenny's films. Kenny's our lead producer, but he directed his third feature. And my brother and I were just trying so hard, almost to the point of harassing him to get on that set just to work as anything. So I was like an assistant editor and my brother was the gaffer. And Patrick was on that film too. So we got to know Patrick. And I tried to cut some scenes together just to show him and impress him and show him that I was able to cut a scene. And so when we had the script, Kenny sent it over to Patrick. They're also childhood friends. Like they'd known each other since they were like in elementary school or something. And he sent the script over to Patrick, but he didn't tell him what it was about. He didn't tell him that it was a horror film. And so Patrick was reading and he's like, okay, he picked up a homeless guy. He's going to help him. And then all of a sudden he's hitting him over the head with a bat. And he's like, okay. And then Jesse's cutting his throat and draining his blood. And he's like, what the hell is going on here? But he said that it was that shock that he had reading it that got him really excited to be on board. And so he was interested in the way that we were subverting these horror tropes and trying to tell a story about family while wrapping it in this vampire container. And then for Owen, he was just my dream choice. Ever since I saw him in Super Dark Times, I was just in love with him as an actor. And I tried to play it cool. And my producer said, okay, you have to seem like you're not in love, like you're not a fanboy when you have a call with him. But the first thing I said, I'm like, look, I'm a really huge fan and I love your work. And I think it was that honesty that resonated with him. And then he came on board. And then my favorite character, which is Jessie, portrayed by Ingrid, which I thought she did an amazing job. This is her first feature. And she hasn't really acted too much, but she actually signed on like a week before we started shooting because we had another lead attached who had to drop out for scheduling problems. But I feel so blessed now because it was such a good match. And I remember I was at Walmart in Utah shopping for wardrobe like at midnight, and we jumped on a call and she was just asking me all these questions about the camera, about where she would stay, just logistical things because it was so fast. And then she said, okay, I'll let you know tomorrow at 9 a.m. or something. And so I didn't sleep that night. And then she ended up telling me, she's like, yeah, I'll do it. And it was that simple. But I was really fortunate to work with 3 very talented people.
Yeah, they were, and Ingrid was amazing as well in that role. And talking about your script too, I love that. I mean, there's no explicit reference to him being a vampire, at any point in the script, which I think is a huge part of why the film is so amazing. And so I almost wish that I would have been Patrick, kind of reading the script without knowing anything about it too, because that would be pretty incredible, I think.
Yeah. I think for the short version, the mythology was a cannibal, but I think we switched it to vampire just because I think everyone knows that a vampire needs blood and everyone knows that a vampire can't go out into sunlight. So the fact that those rules are so written, I didn't have to waste time explaining it because I was more interested in exploring the mythology of this family and the rituals that they've created in their house. So I felt it was a fun way and a visual way to just introduce the blood, and we already know the rules of the archetype. Right.
Well, and I think your film too, has another way to read it, and you keep talking about family, and I think it's been noted since your film was released too about the comparisons between families that suffer with long-term illness or addiction or things like that. And I think, those are kind of the really beautiful moments of your film as well. Can you talk about whether that was a part of the writing process too?
Yeah, so it's interesting. A lot of people have compared it to enabling someone with an addiction. And I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. But for me personally, it had to do with the death of my grandmother. And when she was in hospice, the way that my family behaved and the way that it was just tense. My dad is the youngest of 10 siblings. And so there were so many people in this house, and it was just, you felt like death was around the corner, but at the same time, even though there was all this tension among the siblings and the cousins and the uncles, there was something that was holding us all together, and that was love. And that was the fact that we all shared one thing, which was our blood, and that we were all family. So that's kind of where I came up with the idea of someone being taken care of, and the way that these sacrifices can fracture their relationships.
Wow. Okay. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So we've touched on this a little bit already, but there's been some comparisons of each of your films to some pretty big names in film. Superior, I think, has been compared already to David Lynch or De Palma. For State, we already talked about, the Coen brothers and Tarantino influence, and My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To, sharing some similar themes with Romero's film, Martin. Can each of you talk about your own personal influences, regardless of those comparisons? And then what is it like to be compared to names like that? Does that feel flattering for you? Do you feel like it misses the mark? Aaron, I'm going to have you start if that's okay.
Oh my gosh. That's a big question.
Yeah.
Oh, well, my own, I can talk a little bit about influences. I'm sure Jonathan already mentioned this, but I've been into film forever. Grew up watching a lot of genre movies, especially horror. So that definitely is like part of my subconscious. And yeah, I was already sort of experimenting with genre a little bit in the short film, which is more about sort of like tension between teenage identical twins and one of them wanting to distinguish herself from her sister. But I guess I find like using genre, similar to what Jonathan was saying, like using genre to explore drama is interesting to me. I also like straight genre and kind of hope to also make a straight up horror movie at some point. But I think I was kind of continuing that thread with the feature, but more specifically interested in like thriller, interweaving some of the drama elements of the bond between the sisters with a thriller, like a woman on the run who comes home to hide out. And is kind of trying to suppress this trauma that's following her, eventually catches up with her. But in terms of references, there's so many. Like I just definitely horror, definitely a lot of thrillers. And also like my DP and I are looking at a lot of photography and as well leading up to the shoot. So there's definitely some of those visual references. But like, how do I feel? It's very flattering. I do think, David Lynch is a huge influence tonally, like, for sure.
Even the score reminded me of Twin Peaks.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah. And I also thought of Dead Ringers, the David Cronenberg film, just because of the twin subject, and also the way that you use genre in a drama film. I enjoyed it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love David Cronenberg, so I appreciate that. Yeah, mostly I'm just flattered and excited, and I don't know. Yeah.
Well, how about you, Jonathan? What are your
I think it's the same feeling. You're flattered, and then sometimes you're not sure what it means, because a lot of people had said, oh, he's trying to copy Martin, but it's not as good. And to be honest, I haven't seen Martin. I haven't seen Martin. I haven't seen Only Lovers Left Alive, so I still have a lot of these vampire movies to explore. But I am very influenced by even though my film kind of toes the line between drama and horror, I do love straightforward horror. And I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a very big influence. And another film was Eyes Without a Face. And then just a lot of these modern horror movies that are kind of using tropes of horror to talk about different things, like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, I thought was a very good take on the vampire archetype, or how Raw treats cannibalism. And so it was stuff like that. And then as far as mood and keeping it sparse, we were looking at the films of Pavel Pawlikowski, who did Ida and Cold War, just framing in the Academy ratio. And my brother was also looking at Ozu films like Good Morning, to kind of feel comfortable letting the camera just sit there without having to move it. But the influences just come from all over the place.
And Manuel, I know you talked a little bit already about where a lot of your influence came for the film in writing. And I think, I mean, your film's just hilarious too. And I loved all the characters in it. I think I'm actually just going to move on, if that's okay, to my next question, which leads into this, which is, endings. And I think you can't make a good film in general, genre film, horror film, thriller film, without a good ending. And I just, the finale shootout is my personal favorite part of the film, especially finally bringing all those characters together. I just love too that it ended up being Dennis's wife who kind of fucked everything up. Like it was perfect. So can you talk a little bit about shooting that scene for you guys and what that was like?
Yeah. I mean, it was awesome. That was the most challenging film thing I've ever done in my life. Probably like, film work wise, like anything in my life like that. Most difficult thing, like just so much planning goes into it. That's the interesting thing. You have to just plan forever, and when you're on a budget, you have to be super careful. I mean, I was actually we could only afford a certain number of bullets, actually. And we really wanted to use blanks to just give it more of that like real world texture, and put the actors in the moment, and also we didn't even know what our VFX capabilities would even be, right? So I had to we only could get a certain number of bullets for the Uzis and the pistols, and I actually, it wound up being like 1.5 takes for every shot that was on my storyboard that we could do. So I had tally marks on the storyboard next to each frame, and after I call cut, I'd be like, well, maybe we can do one more, but then the next shot we only get one or whatever. But yeah, every shot, planning every shot. We went actually with the location even. Darren worked there when he was in high school. He's like 18 years older than me, and he worked there when he was like 16 years old. It's no longer a fully functioning lumber mill anymore, but that was kind of a replacement for a location that wasn't going to work out. Ended up being 100 times better than what we ever could have thought. And so then we got all the actors there. Well, actually before that, Darren and I just walked around and looked at everything and filmed a bunch of stuff. Then we got all the actors there and kind of like a chessboard in a way, like had people stand in different places, figured out like the blocking, and then we just kept rehearsing it over and over again. And the actors are sort of like, why are we doing this? But I needed to really like figure out how everyone's going to be moving, since safety is like a big concern once you're getting into using guns on a film. And then we were able to get a great team of armorers from ISS Props who've worked on some of the the biggest films out there to do the firearm stuff. So that actually was really fun and just interesting to watch them work, and they're so professional and so safe, and we're really just like a well-oiled machine. It made the actors feel good about doing it and everything. And then we also worked with our gaffer Cody Martin to figure out how to light this huge space as efficiently as we could, and there was a lot. We shot it in January, even though the movie was supposed to take place in summer. So you have all these people in short sleeve shirts, like around in the cold in January, but for 5 nights in a row. But we did it, and we got all the shots. We did a bunch of practical effects for like the dust hits were actually these little dust paintballs that you can get for bear repellent if you're ever like camping or something. So we used those and shot them at like boards and stuff to make the dust fly around. And then we had our special effects supervisor did some compressed air like blood gags, which were really cool. And so we did all that stuff, and by the end of the 5 nights, I remember the sun was coming up and I was helping the actors strike the set, and just realizing that we got it all. And it was like, that was a pretty incredible feeling. That was when I realized, wow, we actually like made a movie and it's gonna be cool. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, it sounds like a lot of work too, but it paid off, because that scene is one to remember for sure.
Thank you.
And Aaron, I feel like Superior always had to end with the sisters committing a murder together. We're not spoiling anything. Everyone will have already watched them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, should we be talking about all this?
No.
Yeah.
But it's in fact, I hope I get this right, but it is in fact Marion that stabs Robert.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Yeah. You just did such a good job of disorienting the viewer at that point that I had to watch it a few times to make sure. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, that's funny. That I know Ani and Ali so well now that I never confuse them. But there was one moment during that scene where I looked at them and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I could not tell who was who, and that it was like a good thing. It was a good thing. I was like, "Okay, this is good. This is the feeling everyone's supposed to have in this moment." But it did get confusing for people on set. Yeah, I mean, the end similar. It's Manuel, your ending is like such a different level of stunts, and I can't even imagine, because like, yeah, I just feel like in comparison, that living room kind of stabbing scene is so small, but it was kind of the first time I had done stunts, that and the sort of the opening chase scene, and it's really hard. It's like a different, I don't know, just different ball game that I hadn't really experienced.
It's kind of like it's almost, there's a mechanical quality to it.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to just like
break it into pieces. Yeah, very much, especially working with the stunt coordinator. Felt like that. But her actors like Ani and Ali were amazing. They did all their own stunts for that final sequence and like really sort of poured themselves into it, all the actors. And yeah, we like with our DP, our shooting style changed a little bit. Like, I think it was interesting. That was like the stretch where we kind of like had a plan, and then we showed up and started shooting, and we were like, this needs to be much more fluid. So we kind of like went more handheld than we had anticipated, which I think was the right thing to do for the scene. But yeah, it was challenging for sure. I don't know what else I could tell about it.
This is a great ending though too.
Thank you.
I felt like as I was watching too, I felt like I was starting to get to know them to where I could distinguish them from each other too. But in the last scene that definitely
right. That was your question. Yeah, I mean that's the whole movie sort of building, to that crossover, and then it's. I'm glad that it felt kind of dizzying and.
There's like a character arc for their hairstyles, and I think that it's so important because you can discern them so easily at the beginning because they have different color hair. Yeah. But at the very last shot when they're driving, they have the same hairstyle. It's a little wavy, and I didn't know who was who in the very last shot, and I don't want to know. And I think that's very cool what you were able to pull off with great. Hair.
Yeah, that's funny. At some point. Yeah, that became a big part of like the scheduling and the shoot too. It was like the hair. We had these wigs and like it was a big thing that when writing we hadn't anticipated like I was
I
like,
didn't
oh,
know,
we'll
yeah.
just cut their hair and dye it. And then it's like, of course you're not going to just shoot chronologically and do that.
I didn't
Right.
know you had to schedule around hair so much. Like I realized 2 weeks
Yes.
into shooting, I'm like, I didn't tell Patrick to shave. And I went up to him and he's such a professional. He's like, don't worry, I've been trimming it every day, like half an inch. I'm like,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's a
You know,
big,
we had a
it's a
similar
big
thing.
thing.
If you watch closely, you'll see that Tyson's dreads sometimes shot to shot grow.
Change.
Yeah, and he was like clean cut at a nice fade at the beginning of the film, and then by the end, like his hair underneath the dreads has even grown quite a bit.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because you said you spaced out the shoot a bit. Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be
we did.
challenging.
Yeah.
How many days did you all shoot?
I mean, since ours was so, sometimes we were just shooting for a couple hours after everyone got off work. So it's really kind of hard to say, but if you like put it all into a traditional, like, 10, 12-hour day or something, maybe around like 40 or 45. But I think we actually took the camera out like around 70 different times.
It's still a lot. It's still a lot to pull off just to shoot out alone. Like you did
Yes.
so much.
Do you always shoot your own work? I know this is your first feature.
Yeah.
It's so impressive.
Yeah, actually.
That's kind of how you've been, that's your
Yeah.
process.
That's how I learned up to this point. And I actually, I thought of myself as a DP for a while, like shooting other people's stuff too, and kind of, learning that way. And it's just something I really love to do. So, it helped. It was like, it helped that I could do it for practical purposes, but I think I always just wanted to do it. I always just, that's kind of how I think. And, I like being behind the camera. So I don't know if it has to be that way forever, but I do hope to do it again, at least, on something sometime. So.
Well, before I forget though, I do want to talk to Jonathan too about your ending. And it's definitely more of an introspective ending, I think, in your film, and it's really, it's heartbreaking to watch Dwight say goodbye to both of his siblings, but then you also, as a viewer, kind of feel a little bit happy for him in gaining this sense of freedom. So can you talk a little bit about shooting the bedroom scene and then the scene of Dwight at the end, at the lake in particular, if you can talk about that one too?
So a lot easier than both of your endings to shoot. But I think, we actually shot a different ending, and in the editing, we kind of sorted it out. But we really just wanted to maintain the quietness of the film because it's a quiet film. It's very introspective. So we didn't want to switch the tone at the very end. So we wanted to leave Dwight in some sort of purgatory because originally he was supposed to get killed, but we just felt like he would feel right living out his punishment for everything he's done. So we wanted to leave him in this weird setting, which was the Great Salt Lake, and have him kind of exist in this weird purgatory, like in a limbo. But as far as shooting the bedroom scene, we were discussing that for like 3 hours in the room, my brother and I, because we had storyboarded everything, but something felt wrong. And we decided to do it in a oneer where we were just panning back and forth from the two characters as they talked. And I was actually the one operating. And I was so nervous because the performances were so on point. And there was only it was only 2 takes. That was the second take. And I was so scared of nudging the tripod because I would just ruin this sacred moment. And I think everyone behind the camera was kind of tearing up, and I was getting emotional. And it was just so hard sometimes it's so hard to separate the technique with the emotion. But I think it was very important to capture it in one shot like that because it kind of preserved this energy between the two siblings.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was a really beautiful ending. I cried for sure.
And then
alone.
The lake, it was so great to shoot that because that was after 2.5 weeks of shooting in a crowded small house. And so that was the first scene that we did, and beautiful open space, and it was super simple to shoot. So it was a great, it felt like a fresher breath air for the character, but also for the whole crew.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I feel like I could just talk with you three all day. I know we've been going a little long, but so I want to thank you, all of you, for spending your time with us today and for sharing your films with us. And I'll say again, I cannot wait to see what you all do next. So please stay in touch with us. We'd love to play your future films as well. And hopefully you can come to Cleveland in person at that point. We'll have theatrical screenings. I'll have to get a film projector again too.
Right.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, sure. I also want to thank you, our audience, for joining us for today's roundtable episode. We wouldn't be here without your ongoing support to bring film home. Please consider supporting our challenge match presented by Cuyahoga Arts and Culture to support the future of our festival. Our goal is to reach $145,000 this year, and we're so grateful for any amount that you can contribute. To donate, purchase tickets, or check out our full schedule of filmmaker conversations like this one, please visit clevelandfilm.org. With that, please stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.